everyone, and welcome to our YouTube channel, Moneyline with Nancy at TV. In case you're not a subscriber yet, please do subscribe. Just press the subscribe button as well as turn on the notification bell so that you can get notifications when we upload our videos. Don't also forget to subscribe and join, follow, like our other social media platforms. Of course, you're seeing it right about now. Don't also forget to share this video across your platforms. Enjoy the video. All right, welcome back. Sometimes the biggest questions in governance are not just about what is being done, but when it is being done and exactly for whom. Like I mentioned earlier on, the Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission announced that it has begun reviewing the salaries of political, public and judicial office holders. The argument is simple. The pay packages have remained the same since 2008. And for context, like I mentioned at the beginning, President Tinubu earns about 1.5 million naira monthly, while a minister takes home less than 8 million naira. By today's economic standards, the commission says that that figure is outdated. But here is where the story, of course, gets more complicated. Many Nigerians are asking, outdated for who? At a time when civil servants are negotiating for a living wage, when inflation has pushed food and fuel prices to record levels, and when millions struggle daily just to get by. The idea of higher pay for political office holders strikes many as insensitive, and the timing makes the questions even louder. This is the largest cabinet in Nigeria's history, yet the Orosoye report, which promised to cut the cost of governance, like I mentioned earlier on, has been on ice for 16 months without implementation. So, right about now, the big question is this pay review necessary, or is it a case of misplaced priorities? Does increasing the salaries of political office holders strengthen governance or widen the gap between leaders and the led? To help us make sense of this, Dr. Abah, Country Director of DAI and former Director General of the Bureau of Public Service Reforms, is with me now to cut through the chase or cut through the layers of this issue. Dr. Abah, good to see you. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Nancy. Always a pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. Always a pleasure to have you. Where do we start? Let me play the devil's advocate.
Okay.
And start by saying RAMFAC argues that the 1999 Constitution, of course, empowers them to review the remuneration. But does power automatically mean timing? Should legal mandate of RAMFAC be exercised without considering the economic context and the public sentiments that we have seen?
It's a good question, Nancy, but I think we need to distinguish between conducting a review and implementing a new pay scale. So nothing wrong with conducting a review. Like they said, it's within their constitutional mandate to conduct a review. And they did say that they can, that they plan to consult as many people as possible. So nothing wrong with conducting a review. What makes it difficult is when you start to make arguments that are not necessarily logical. You know, you start to say, oh, you know, the central bank governor earns more than the president. So what? The governor of the Bank of England earns £600,000 a year. The prime minister earns £172,000. The president of the United States earns $400,000 US per annum. There are many veteran health association leads that earn more than the president. So what's that argument? So it starts off on the wrong premise. Rather than saying, look, our salary system is basically in a mess, which it is. There's so many distortions, so many inconsistencies, and we need to look at this again. And then you also need to think about perhaps the need to distinguish between the different types of political office holders. So if you said you wanted to look at the pay and salary of judges, for instance, many people will not violently complain. But it is within the same premise, within the same system, that you'll also look at the pay of legislators who already pay themselves what they want, illegally in my view. And so when you bunch all of these things up, it just becomes difficult for people to understand why would you want to review the pay of legislators who already pay themselves whatever they want. And then, there are judges, there are retired PEMSECs I know whom are struggling, and the fact that the the recent increase in the minimum wage has pushed up the salaries of everybody else to the extent that a director in the civil service is earning roughly the same as a permanent secretary now. Whereas when the systems were put in, a permanent secretary was earning, I think, about twice what a director was earning. So the whole thing is all over the place and needs to be reviewed and recalibrated. But you don't start by announcing, people are earning more than the president. Of course, that's not unusual at all.
Why do you think we have those disparities? For example, while you say central bank governor will earn more than the president, and this analogy you gave, why perhaps, for example, because a permanent secretary is like the head, administrative head of the ministry,
Yes.
why should a PS earn, or a director almost earn like a permanent secretary?
Yeah. So the distortion is historical. So first of all, the argument was that if you run a revenue-generating organization like the Nigerian Communications Commission or the Federal Inland Revenue Service or NIMASA, that you needed to be compensated adequately such that you will not be tempted to dip your hands into the revenue you're generating. I don't think that logic still stands, given the Treasury single account that everybody pays the money into. Then there was an argument about regulators. So if you run the Nigerian Communications Commission, you should be paid almost at par with the head of MTN or Airtel or whatever, because if you're not paid adequately, then they can they can influence you based on you're not earning enough. So it's a bit, but that doesn't apply across the board. So it's a bit like arguing that the head of the DG of the Nigerian Broadcasting Commission should earn the same as the managing director of AIT or Channels Television. What then happened was immediately people saw, and so once you are exempted as an agency from this pay of political appointees that RANFAC controls, you then go to the Salaries and Wages Commission and make a case to be paid differently. And so people like the DG of NIMASA, the governor of the central bank, I've just quoted the salary of the governor of the Bank of England to you. You can't find the salary of the central bank governor in Nigeria anywhere. You can't find the salary of the DG of NIMASA. So what people then do is they simply go to the Salaries and Wages Commission and lobby to say, look, I'm a specialist agency, I'm revenue generating, therefore I need to be paid 3 million naira or 5 million naira benchmarked against the industry and not the 895,000 take home that I should get as a DG. So all of that distortion happens. And then you have boards of agencies providing all sorts of allowances.
That's the boards of agencies.
The boards of agencies providing all sorts of allowances to their chief executive. So the whole thing is all over the place. And that's why, excuse me, that's why to my mind, it would have been sensible to focus on sorting out all of these disparities and inconsistencies between the work of RANFAC and the work of the Salaries and Wages Commission, and come to a sensible view. Because when I was DG, I tried to push for a review of all of this, an unbundling of all of these systems. And one of the arguments was, look, okay, somebody that is already earning 3 million naira, you can't say, okay, come back and start earning 1 million naira because you've done a review and found out that they're actually doing the same job as everyone else. So it's difficult to bring it back. But now that there's a compelling need, which I agree to, to review the salaries and make them more realistic, that should provide an opportunity to say, okay, you know, instead of bringing back these people that have been earning 3 million, let's push up those who have been earning less than that and equalize the whole thing. Let's look at some of these distortions. Let's see whether the assumptions on the basis of which we started to pay disparate salaries still holds. And then when you've done all that, and you mentioned the Orosanye report, you also show some fiscal prudence and responsibility. If after you've done that, you now come out and say, look, we've done all of this, and you know, it's time to look again at how we remunerate our people. Yes, there will still be agitators, but most reasonable people will feel that you've taken reasonable steps.
Should we even be more concerned about the remuneration now? Because even with the remuneration now, we still have issues of allowances, different allowances, housing, furniture. For instance, even the political officials like the legislators, they will have newspaper allowance, it's all those kind of allowances that when you add them up, they're even more than the salaries themselves every month.
Sorry, excuse me. A lot of people form that impression. It's not necessarily correct, Nancy.
With the legislators or who?
With everybody. It's not necessarily correct. With the legislators, like I said, they've made their own rules and they are doing what they like. I can't comment on that. But let's if you look at the RAMFAC circular, what you get as a DG is, I think, 615,000 naira a month. You then get leave allowance of about 120,000 naira a year. You get furniture allowance of about 5.7 million once in 4 years. And then you get a severance allowance
once
of...
in 4 years. How long does it take us to change our furniture? So once
well,
in 4
you're
years
not expected to be there forever.
Okay.
With the monetization policy, you may not even live in Abuja. You're supposed to come here, rent a property on your own, furnish it on your own, all out of your salary. And so apart from the furniture allowance, which you get once in 4 years, and the leave allowance of about 1.2 million, I think, which you get annually, that's it. There's no other allowance. Everything is in the salary. The only other thing you get is a severance benefit of 5.7 million after successfully completing your tenure of 4 years. That's it. That's what is legal. But people do all sorts of things that are not legal. But what I've just told you is what is legal, what is in the RAMFAC circular. So I know it's difficult to believe, but it's true.
No, to an extent, I know those things that you're talking about in terms of the salary scale. But I'm just saying, because I'm trying to get where you stand, in the sense that, okay, they should increase the salary. But because you're saying there are a lot of disparities, and even what these people take home do not necessarily take them home. But the timing is not right.
Yes.
That's where you stand.
That's what I'm saying.
And with all the gamut of what has happened, Orosanye report has not happened. I know we discussed this many years ago.
Yes, we have.
It has not happened.
We're going to discuss it for the rest of our lives, I'm sure.
I wonder what would happen to Dr. Steve Orosanye. Like, my name is just everywhere, you know. But 16 months, and I really had hopes when President Tinubu came in, and he announced it in February, giving the delivery units headed by Adisa Bala Usman to handle it since February till now, about 16 months. But if I have time, I'll come to that if I have time. But given the peculiarities of what's happening now, we're still having inflation, which is double digits. The president currently runs the largest cabinet in our history. How do you now begin to justify to Nigerians that they rationalize the idea that they need higher pay for political office holders when government has failed to cut the size, the redundancy, and wastefulness in government?
You've put your finger right on the issue. So it's not that there isn't a need to review the salaries upwards. Of course there is. You know, a PEMSEC can control billions as accounting officer. You're paying in 1 million naira. Okay, that 1 million naira is all that he retires with. Okay, so you have that issue, and then you have the issue of someone retiring or leaving another job and going with a severance benefit of 250 million, some 400 million.
In some agencies.
In some agencies, some go with the cars that they were using. They sell it to them at salvage costs. Others actually get the full convoy that they were using, and then the government buys a new one. So you look at that and you think, okay, if I'm permanent secretary, how would I feel about that? And the 1 million naira that permanent secretaries get, as you can imagine, the older you get, the more health challenges you are. You're paying more and more for drugs, and you know, and everybody is looking at a retired federal permanent secretary and saying, you know, how can you say you don't have money? So it's absolutely right to review the salaries and make them more realistic. But in doing so, like I said, you also need to review the distortions and make it more balanced. And then you need to show financial responsibility. If you come to Nigerians and argue that, oh, the president is earning 1.5 million naira, central bank governor is earning more, like I said, anybody that says so what would be completely. It would be completely understandable to say that. And they can go further and say, well, the president lives in a free house. He eats free food. He doesn't have to pay for transport. He doesn't have to pay for healthcare. He can travel in the best way if he wants to go anywhere. So should you even take a salary as a president? Anybody can ask that question. And that's why a number of US presidents, for instance, have donated their salaries. I think President Trump
did it in his first term,
yes, he was only keeping $1 symbolically, and he donated the rest. So, you know, the premise of the argument is just faulty, to my mind.
Doesn't competence should also play a part in this? Shouldn't competence play a part?
It should.
Because we're seeing this question around pay, rise and all of that around what the Salaries and Incomes Wages Commission, the scale, that what they put, but shouldn't competence also play a role? We are using now central bank governor, any other. I'm not saying that a central bank governor could be more competent than the president, but in some instances they could be more too, but shouldn't competence also play a role in that?
Well, competence and performance should have a role. However, in the developing world,
performance, delivery, results.
So in the developing world, performance contracting hasn't really worked. It just hasn't. It's been tried in very many places, Kenya, South Africa. You just end up giving people more money. It hasn't really worked. From my own experience. However, a focus on delivery does. So you remember that we're talking about this offline. We've come back to it again. The last presidential retreat that was done.
That was when you last were here.
The president signed.
I think it was done in July 2023.
Yeah, I think later than.
Yes, or August or something.
Yeah, later than that.
Yes, later than that. But it's almost 2 years.
Yes. So the president signed performance agreements with ministers and permanent secretaries. And that works. That tends to work better if it's monitored and publicized. So the public actually knows who is doing well and who is not. But what it does is it makes it easier for the president to decide who to keep and who to let go. I remember when I worked in the UK, when you have your annual appraisal, the focus wasn't actually on what you get paid the next year. The focus is you have an annual appraisal, and your boss says, okay, you've done very well, you've met all your targets, your work has been impressive, congratulations, you get to keep your job for another year. That was the mentality. Your performance review is to determine whether you get to keep your job for the next year. So it can help with the president deciding who is doing well and who is not. The reason why there's a bit of nervousness about tying pay to performance is, again, because of the ease with which you can use it to favor somebody or discriminate against another person without objectivity. So it's always safer to set your performance targets and say, this is what you must deliver, publicize it. If you don't deliver it, make sure everybody knows that this person didn't deliver, and then, you know, either put them on a performance improvement program or show them the way out.
Doctor, this argument of unrealistically low pay for political appointees incentivizes them to seek, you know, rent elsewhere. In other words, incentivizes corruption, as it is. How can we directly link pay levels of appointees to corruption outcomes? Should we actually also be addressing corruption by raising pay, or perhaps by tightening institutional controls of accountability? You know, institutional controls or accountability frameworks.
Okay, well, I think the link between poor pay and corruption is tenuous. I don't necessarily buy it, because if that was the case, then the people who are paid more will not be corrupt. But that's not been the experience. So yes, I understand that you need a minimum threshold to be able to live a decent life, and you know, below that threshold, it is easier to tempt the person with corrupt trends. But you know, it doesn't mean that there aren't people that have values, that have come into public service to serve, and are aware that they're not, you know, this is not the avenue through which people can get rich. So I think someone saying, oh, I stole because my salary was low, I will not accept. You stole because you're a thief, basically. There are a lot of people who earn very little salaries and, you know, have the moral values to continue to be honest and upright. There are a lot of teachers, a lot of soldiers, believe it or not, a lot of policemen who, despite the low pay that they have continued to remain upright and morally just.
Doctor, I was coming to that and you just took it out of my mouth. When civil servants as well as even teachers earn below what I call a survival wage. Because it's not even about minimum wage or even living wage is a far cry, a survival wage. So is this proposed salary increase for politicians or political office holders not an open invitation to social discontent? You know, not an open invitation for that widening trust deficit that the government has suffered even over time. For a country that is grappling with inflation, rent has gone up everywhere across the country. People can't find affordable rentage again, even here in Abuja. If you take monies to the market, you're coming back, you don't know what your monies are buying for you, and all of that. So isn't the government attracting even more social discontent to itself?
I think it depends on the way the thing is communicated, because these public officials that you're talking about are also Nigerians, and they also go to the same markets and pay the same fuel prices. So you know, as DG, I was earning 895,000 naira a month. If I was still DG, that's what I'll still be earning, because the salaries have not changed since 2008. And inflation is running at over 30%, food prices. So these people are also Nigerians. I think what happens is the people who are earning and surviving on legitimate pay are tainted by those who are not. So they are tainted by the legislators paying themselves whatever they like. They are affected by the so-called juicy agencies that are not covered by RAMFAC, and the public see these people and think, well, that's what all civil servants, that's what all public servants get. That's not the case. So there's a need to also think about these people as human beings. But like I said, it depends on how the thing is communicated. And I continue to be concerned that the way it's being communicated is not proper.
Do you think that no matter how it's being communicated, Nigerians will still not take it? Because I don't know if there would ever be a good timing, but at this time, and what Nigerians are feeling now, this is not even a matter of communication anymore. Don't you think so?
Our mentality in Nigeria is that everybody in government is a thief. That's the mentality. And so if you talk about paying anybody even a naira more, you will get that reaction anyway. But you cannot, because of that reaction, not do the right thing in the right way. So Nigerians would always complain, even saying that you pay ministers ₦1 million. Many Nigerians will say, why are you paying them ₦1 million? It's too much. They should be on the minimum wage of 70,000 like everybody else. So you'll always have that. But that shouldn't stop you from running a sensible pay scheme that, like you said, gives people appropriate remuneration for the work they do and the sacrifices they make.
Is there a way that, since 2008 that this pay review has been frozen, is there a way that we can even measure perhaps policy delivery across these agencies or whatever RAMFAC wants to do with them, service improvement, and let's measure it? Okay, you guys are asking for this. What is the job that needs to be done? What has been done? What has been the input? Well, I'm just thinking like a business person.
Should we start with the National Assembly?
Yes, we can, because some of them have been there, and some of them make proud to say, I've been there like 3 times, 4 times, senators and all of that.
What would you say has been the impact since 2008?
Doctor, I ask the questions.
I thought we were friends and we're just having a conversation.
It seems like that on my show, but I ask the questions. Go ahead.
No, my point is this. Of course, it's been varied. It's been mixed. Some organizations have done well. It depends on when you measure the performance of any organization, you must always start with its mandate. Yeah. So how are you doing against your mandate? And some have done well against their mandates at various points. Okay, so take NAFDAC, for instance, was a very poorly performing agency. Professor Akunyili came in, raised its profile, people recognized NAFDAC. I mean, the saying then was even, I'll report you to NAFDAC, or NAFDAC must hear about this. So, it raised a certain consciousness in people's minds. And then there were people that followed her and, have stabilized it in some way. There are some that have made it regress. There are others now that are trying to, get it back to where it used to be. The same thing with EFCC. The same thing with FRS. So these things ebb and flow. And at some points, some organizations have performed well. At other points, maybe not as well as in the past.
Let's talk about proliferation of agencies, because there's no how we can talk about this without bringing that into the equation.
Yeah.
If you take a look at, perhaps since 2008, since RAMFAC has mentioned this, we've seen a proliferation of MDAs. You see many institutions are being legislated upon that has come up on board. Doesn't that expansion of bureaucracy that we're seeing so far in the country itself drive personnel and political office appointees or employees, their salary, their cost, more than the actual pay levels itself? Let me granularize, if there's any English like that, make it granular. For example, instead of having like 100 agencies, can you have like 50 or 70 agencies that perform well and you pay them well, than you having 200 or 1,000 and you pay them well? How do you justify that? And how sustainable is the growth when we're seeing that recurrent expenditure in the country takes a high percentage of our budget? Let me also put this in, and perhaps we'll bring in the Orosaye report, which I did mention earlier on. What would you say about the political will? Why is it that the political will to implement this reform has been lacking? And I hope that Dr. Steve Orosaye sleeps well every day, because His name has been, you know. So what is actually lacking? Why there is no appetite to do this? And Madam Bala has been silent about it somehow.
Nancy, you know that for every long question you ask me, I have to give a longer answer.
Yes, go ahead.
You know. Okay, starting with the number of agencies, you're absolutely right. There's been a huge proliferation of agencies. There were 541 agencies in the Orosori report. As at 2022, the DG of the Budget Office said we had about 940 corporations and about 500 and something other bodies. So you're talking about 1,500 agencies. The Social Enterprise Organization budget said we had 1,381, I think. But I have a feeling that they haven't counted some others. They've basically just gone with the budget. And there are some that are not necessarily in the budget that you can download. People like NDDC, you may not immediately see what their budget is. So we're talking of nearly a trebling between 2012, when the Orosori report was submitted, and today. So yes, you're absolutely right. It is better to have less number of agencies and pay people better to do better work. That's undoubtedly much more sensible. The question about political will needs to be unpacked. So I always say that political will has, 4 dimensions. People always think, oh, once the president is on board, the political will is there. Not necessarily. The president might want something and the system does not want it, and it won't happen.
And the system is
the system is the political party. The system is even his own government, because there are different bastions of power in government. The system is the National Assembly. They may not want it. So there are different things. So the president has tremendous power under the Constitution. But in practice, in utilizing that power, there are various bastions of power that can constrain even the president. So that's one constituency. Then you need to have a mass of people who are sufficiently committed to the same thing, right, to be able to do it. So I remember when I was DG and we're trying to push for the implementation of the Orosori report, there was a permanent secretary that called me and he said, Joe, I want to advise you because you're my friend. I don't want you to make a mistake. There are only 3 people in this government that are committed to implementing the Orosori report: Mr. President, the Chief of Staff to the President, and yourself. So don't believe there's any support from anywhere else. And so don't be surprised if this doesn't get implemented. And that was under President Buhari's time. So when the president announces, or the government announces that they're going to implement the Orosori report in February last year and sets up a committee, that's probably like the 6th committee that's been set up since then. Then you get the political party saying, why would we want to cut agencies when it's our time to appoint? Right? It's our time to appoint people. The National Assembly will just ignore and continue to create new agencies with every single legislation that comes their way. The people in position would lobby. Whoever is the decision maker will lobby the decision maker to ensure that this thing doesn't get off the ground. The people whom you've appointed into the committees each have agencies under their own bodies whom they will. So this is why it's so difficult, and that's why if it's going to be done, it has to be done with the leadership of the president being able to negotiate with these power blocks and just drive it through.
Okay, finally, Dr. Abah, if you had to advise Mr. President on this issue that we're talking about, pay rise, governance, also a report, you've given a recommendation in your last remark though, but if you were to advise the President on this issue, what would you say? And let me also take this comment from one of our viewers, Richardson, saying the pay rise for political office holders is not anything entertaining for a common Nigerian. The timing is too insensitive. Thank you very much, Richardson, for your message. A lot of messages coming, but that's the only one I can take. So what would you advise Mr. President if you had audience with him on this?
I think that my key advice would be that he needs to lead a certain national, what's the word? A certain national reorientation by himself.
So he needs to be an example.
He needs to be an
or
example.
Or to be the example.
To be the example of what he's asking others
to do.
So he needs to look at the size of his cabinet again and determine whether he truly needs 50 ministers. Yeah. I think if you were to go on the streets, maybe you should one of these days, go on the streets and ask Nigerians to name 10 ministers of the 50.
There are some of us that are even seemingly learned that cannot name 10 ministers.
So this is the point. Yeah. So the president, and you know, naming the ministers doesn't mean there are those who are not working silently. But you know, he needs to re-examine whether he really needs 50 ministers. He needs to think about the agencies, and it was a good thing that he did recently by announcing that there will be a moratorium to the creation of new federal universities. I was really pleased to hear that. So, you know, take a bold step about the proliferation of agencies. Prioritize the importance of the civil service as drivers of development. Don't just see them as a burden that you just need to pay as little as possible. Task them with developing the economy and sack those who are not performing. That's, I think, what the president needs to lead with.
So he needs to be the example.
Yeah.
For the fact that you're asking us to sacrifice, what kind of sacrifice or sacrifices are coming from you, those in the corridors of power. Thank you very much, Dr. Joe Abah. And I hope it doesn't take 2 years. Or the nudge on Twitter, calling me out. Doctor had to call me out on Twitter, you know, and I, you know, heeded the call. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks,
I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
All right, I've been speaking with Dr. Joe Abah, Country Director of DAI and former Director General of the Bureau of Public Service Reforms. We've been talking about the pay rise of political office holders. I'll see you all again tomorrow, God willing. Be the best you can be. I'm going to change that you want to see. I am Nancy Naji. Thank you for making it up to this minute watching the video. Thank you all. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Moneyline with Nancy TV. Like, follow all our other social media platforms where we keep you up to speed with fantastic interviews, as well as markets, personal finance, business, and economy information. This is the best place to be. I'll see you all again in the next video.